Nostr is a protocol that it's really just a communication protocol, right? It's a cryptographic communication protocol that allows you to send messages, signed messages by private and public keys, right? There's way more applications than just social media, right?
Hello everyone, Thank Bitcoin 21 Hodl here. I spoke with Diego, also known as 42 Papusas on X. Diego is a developer building on Nostr. An interview is interesting because Diego is building a real-world implementation company with a healthcare partner on the Nostr protocol. The name of his company is Illuminodes, which you can find at Illuminodes on X. Also, as well, you can find on the web at illuminodes.com. Thanks for watching, and here's Nostr Developer Diego. Hey Diego, how are you today?
Very good, Mike. Thank you. How are you?
Hey, a lot of people think of Nostr as a social media platform, but you're doing something completely different on Nostr. Tell us what you're doing with Nostr, how you're building on Nostr.
So yeah, like you mentioned, Nostr has gotten a lot of hype around social media especially. One of the big people pushing it is Jack Dorsey, obviously well known from Twitter. So his big use case is social media and trying to replace Twitter and other social media clients as big alternatives. But if in reality, Nostr is a protocol that it's really just a communication protocol, right? It's a cryptographic communication protocol that allows you to send messages, signed messages by private and public keys, right? That's really all it is in its real sense. So there's way more applications than just social media, right? If you think about how the internet works in every sense, right? Whether you're using it for banking or whether you're using it to get medical records from somewhere or to do government taxes, anything you're doing on the internet, you have to provide some sort of authorization, right? Whether it be, and this is usually done through passwords and usernames, or sometimes through cookies or other stuff like that companies have developed in order to provide some sort of authentication and authorization layer, right? Because Nostr works with private and public keys, it is a communication layer that has ingrained on itself the authorization and authentication layers, right? So you can start replacing all of these applications, whether it be banking, medical research, data storage, right, with a communication layer that is signed at a protocol level, right?
So a lot of people thinking about Nostr think of it as like maybe a music platform or a video sharing platform, but at its core, Nostr is really not that. It's really a text-based platform. Could you kind of explain why it works best, like with a text, than sharing videos and audio? Although you clearly can, and how can you? Let's say someone wants to put a video podcast up on their Nostr. What's the best way for them to do that? But what does Nostr lend itself to best?
Okay, so like you mentioned, Nostr is a text-based protocol. It is a communication protocol on like I mentioned, but it is text-based itself. Every Nostr event that you send out to the network is just a piece of text data, right? That is encoded in a specific way, but it is human-readable text, right? So this lends itself for a lot of use cases better than others, right? Something like a video platform is kind of complicated to do directly through Nostr, right? Because the data is encoded as text, and video, when you try to encode video or pictures or stuff like that as text, it's going to get very large and messy, right? So Nostr is not perfectly suited for transmitting video or other file types directly, but Nostr, because it works as such a great communication and authentication layer, right? You can use Nostr as a coordinator, right? So you can send messages back and forth between users to coordinate the transfer of files or video, be it video, music, images, or anything, in a secure sense with any of the other open source tools that we have for those means, right? So, RSS, for example, right? RSS is a long-standing protocol for media that requires some previous communication with the user. So Nostr isn't going to fully replace RSS, but it is going to make RSS better in the sense that now you can create that pre-connection that you needed for RSS to work. You can coordinate it through Nostr, right? And through that coordination, now set up an RSS feed so that you can get your streaming video or your streaming music, right, in an open source and secure and also efficient way, right? Because you can start encoding music and images and text onto the as text and then onto a Nostr node and just use Nostr directly, but it's going to get very inefficient very fast, right? So we don't want to fall into a golden hammer type of situation where we try to use one tool for everything, right? I think the beauty of open source development is that you can build different tools for different use cases, right? I think we've seen a lot of this in Bitcoin, for example, where everyone was doing NFTs and other stuff on other chains now, and now there's people doing NFTs on Bitcoin, and like you always want to Bitcoin developers want to do everything on Bitcoin, and Ethereum developers want Ethereum to be everything, right? So I want to kind of get away from the golden hammer idea and, okay, what is Bitcoin good for? Financial layers. What is Nostr good for? Communication layers, right? You could try to do communications on Bitcoin. There's many people who have tried, right? You could try to do finance layer Nostr. There's many people that are trying with eCash, for example, and other stuff like that. But to me, a better alternative is use the right tools for the right jobs, right? Nostr works as a great coordinator, as a great text coordinator between identities, right? RSS works well for media files, right? We have a bunch of different tools, and why not use them for what they need?
Send a link, but then doesn't that link take them off platform, or is that a wrong way to think of it? Like on X, if you click on a video, it keeps you on platform and you just hit done and you go right back to X.
No, the goal, in fact, as a user is, and this is going to be a little hard because Nostr is such an early space yet, but hopefully by a great Nostr platform and let's not even call it a Nostr platform, a great user platform, right, is going to integrate these tools so that a user never has to think about it, right? There's already some experiments. For example, I know Snort and Iris and some of the social media clients on Nostr already allow you to just through a button upload an image or upload an audio file or a video file, right? And you don't have to worry about whether it's RSS or what it's doing on the back end. On the back end, they are doing all that for you, right? You as a user are just pressing one button, and then the people you're trying to share it to are getting on their client just on platform, just at the press of a button, they're getting that RSS feed directly, right? Users are not expected to know the technical details of this. Users should expect these things and require these things from the clients they use, right? So we're gonna see, and we are already seeing a big race to be the greatest Nostr client, right? The first Facebook of Nostr, you could call it that way. And I think the clients that are going to win are the ones that abstract all these problems away from a user in a way that don't lose the sovereignty of keeping things in open source stacks, right?
Build on. Why is Nostr easier to develop on than Bitcoin?
So even though Bitcoin and Nostr share a lot of the same models, right, in the sense of you have to keep private keys, you have to work through public keys on the other, Nostr has a very big advantage in the sense that, well, first, the protocol is a lot simpler. And a lot of people hear the word simple and think, oh, it's less powerful or it's not as good, right? And that's not the case. It's just the protocol itself has a lot less rules that you have to adhere to for the protocol to work correctly, right? The protocol in its sense, the Nostr protocol in its most basic sense, is just one type of data, right? And how you transmit that data over servers, right? So there's only really two rules. Encode the data this way and send the data to the server in this way, right? Everything else is kind of up to you with how you build the application, right? That gives developers a lot of freedom in the tools they want to use, right? So Nostr isn't limited to a specific language, right? For example, in Bitcoin for a really long time, if you wanted to develop stuff on Bitcoin, you were basically stuck to C because that's how Bitcoin was built, and it was such a complicated system. Then building everything from scratch was really hard, right? Obviously, now that the system is a lot more mature, after more than a decade of developing Bitcoin, right, you have a lot of tools for everything. But Nostr is much more simpler in the fact that we can start now, and in 10 minutes on your language of programming language of choice, in 10, 15 minutes, you can probably have a working Nostr client, right? So it's really a very simple protocol in the rules that you have to follow. And then we have another big advantage on top of something like Bitcoin, that Nostr in itself has no financial cost for using the system itself, right? If you think about Bitcoin, even though it gives us all this sovereignty and all this peer-to-peer way to transact, every time you want to run a transaction, right, there is a cost to that. And we've gone through great lengths to provide developers with tools to avoid these kind of things, right? We have testnet, we have regnets, we have signets, so that these costs aren't as expensive for a user. But you're still adding a huge overhead for when you try to push things to production, for example, right? There's any type of Bitcoin application is going to have some sort of liquidity management. You're going to have to be thinking about not to get hacked, to lose money, right? So there's so many more layers that you have to add when you think about a financial application, right? That at the end of the day, every Bitcoin application is a financial application. Every Ethereum application is a financial application, right? There's so many more layers of abstraction that you have to add when dealing with finance that it really becomes a lot more cumbersome for developers to get into the space, right? On Nostr, on the other hand, you can start creating Nostr nodes and sending them to servers that you don't even own or you don't have anything to do with. Relays are out there, just ready for you to send messages to, right? And that costs you absolutely zero, right? Other than the electricity to run your computer at the end of the day. But that's, I mean, it's not really a cost, right? So it's very, very, the developer experience is very good because you can basically choose the language of your choice. It works with anything. It's very simple data structures. And on the other end, transactions do not have costs, right? You can send as many messages you want to a Nostr relay. You can read as many messages you want from the Nostr relay, and there's no cost attached to that. So that really gives you a huge, huge advantage in the terms of how fast the clients can be built.
Okay, and a lot of people, when they think of Nostr, they obviously know it's decentralized, it's a sovereign, it's a way to reclaim your sovereignty. It means you own your profile, you own your data. Users can control their own data instead of the old way we've been used to with these centralized companies who tend to have a one-size-fits-all or one. It's about forcing you into a certain social or economic control over you to please behave so you can be on our platform. But another big thing that has broken through to the public is they understand that the Bitcoin payment stack, if you will, it's fully decentralized, it's censorship resistant, it's open, permissionless, global, controlling your own profile, owning your own data, and having a relationship directly with the company that you want to have the other person or company you want to have a relationship with.
So we recently just launched our company Illuminodes. We are at our core, we are an open source software company, right? Our main goal is to put as much open source software out there as we can. And our first big project is a Nostr project. I think, like we mentioned, like for all the reasons I mentioned, starting out with Nostr is a lot simpler than starting out with other things. So that's our main big goal, right? First big goal to be a big player in the Nostr space. And like we also mentioned, a lot of the development right now focus is going to social media clients. We see a huge opportunity in the space of like you said, managing your own data, right? So for a really long time, users have been fed this idea, right, that they give you services over the internet, right? So for example, you log on Facebook, right? And you can use these services for free. And we've been fed the idea that everything is for free, right? That you just click a button on Facebook and you like on Facebook and you keep your pictures on Facebook and everything is free, right? The user doesn't see a cost. What we've really come to see over the years is that there is really a cost to this. The cost is an opportunity cost, right? Facebook can give all these services out to free to users because they're taking users' data, selling that data via advertisement or sometimes directly, right? And profiting immensely from that data, right? So the big opportunity we see here is to remind users that their data is extremely valuable, right? So we've identified a few different cases, especially starting in the medical field. We're creating a setup where users can interact with service providers through a coordinator, right? Through a Nostr coordinator in this sense, in order to keep full control and sovereignty of their data, right? The tools we're using to create this is actually very simple. We're using Nostr as the communication layer, and we're using encryption to make sure users keep control of their data, right? So right now, Facebook and all these works in a model where users send their data to Facebook, and Facebook keeps it on their server, and they can encrypt it how they want, and they can use it as how they want, right? What we're building is a system where users have their data encrypted so that only they can use it, right? And then store it on the relays so that they have a redundant copy of them, right? What this allows is that if now an advertiser or someone else who's interested in that data wants access, they can see that the data is living on relay, but they cannot access it because it is encrypted. So at that point, they can contact you directly, or a coordinator in this case, in the setup we are building. They can contact the coordinator and say, "Hey, we want all this data. Can you coordinate your users so that they decrypt it to us, and then we will provide you some financial incentives," right? That is the basic setup that we're creating, and if we can create this setup, you will remind users that how valuable their data is, and they will be incentivized to join the Nostr network, right? So that's kind of our big goal. Short term, we already have identified at least the communication and identity parts of it. We are working with some medical partners in order to set up medical identities for both users, doctors, and the hospitals itself, so that they can start transmitting data securely in a way that they really own the data. If all these experiments go well and everything keeps developing as it is, we should be able to start adding the financial layer on top of it, and then really start bringing in the masses by providing real financial incentives to users.
Does that mean that the old model gets flipped, totally reversed?
It's really these companies are really looking for data for useful reasons, right? Even advertisement, like I think it's you could say, oh, I don't want advertisement, but at the end of the day, it is useful to know what things you want to buy or sell, right? Like advertisement is a useful thing. In the medical field, it's even more important, right? Like imagine if no one shared medical data, how would we develop medicine and medical procedures, right? Like, so sharing medical data is really important, right? All we want to do is allow users to opt into that sharing, right? Right now, when Facebook sells your information to someone else, right, you have no say in that, right? So at the end of the day, whether it be incentivized financially or not, I think it's really important that users have the option, right? Even if it's just the press of a button, right? At the press of a button, do you want to unencrypt your data so that company X can use it? Yes or no?
Are you expecting that? Are you hoping that? Is it 10x better? How is it 10x better for whatever you're able to reveal?
I think what I would dare say is not only is it a 10x better, it's 100x better. Perhaps not the application itself, not our client specifically, but the underlying model itself underneath, that's what's 100x better, right? So what our hope is that if you give people tools, however underdeveloped they are, right? It's going to be hard to say that we can compete with someone as big as the big medical entities in providing some software, right? Obviously, there's legacy medical systems that have a lot more funding and a lot more resources to provide on development, right? But what we hope is that if you provide users access to a underlying system that is 100x better, 1000x better, right? Users won't care about really what software they're using, right? They're going to be so willing to want to be part of that system, right? That they will see you as the only alternative, right? So that's our really big goal right now.
Cool. Thank you, Diego. It's so awesome seeing you here in San Salvador and coming to El Salvador and discovering what people are building here. And you're just doing an amazing job. I hope I get to see the launch, and I'm so excited to meet you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the interview. It's been fun.